Welcome to The Art of Adventure. This is episode 300. Oh my goodness, we are celebrating episode 300. 300 is the number of episodes that I said I was going to do when I first started. And wow, it's been 6 years, I think. I don't even know. Time has no meaning anymore when you've been podcasting as long as I have. No, just kidding. But I can't believe it's here. Wow. I didn't know if it was going to feel like this, but it feels like such a milestone. And at the same time, it feels like just another day. So I want to take this episode and I want to talk about some of the things that I've learned from running a podcast for 300 episodes for 6 years, all the interviews I've done, some of the things that I've learned about podcasting, about business, about adventure, about spirituality, metaphysics, peak performers, and all of these things. It's been quite a journey. So first, where I want to go is the identity of myself and of this podcast. These two have been intertwined. When I first came up with the name, The Art of Adventure, it was actually just a blog. And I started talking about the blog and people started associating me as Mr. Adventure. And that really forced me to become more adventurous. So I would always look for ways to be adventurous. And I would always look at exactly what is adventure. I expanded that definition from travel to be adventuring in so many different parts of our lives. And one of the early questions that I would ask guests is, what is your definition of adventure? And I spent a long time in the beginning of the show really trying to understand what is adventure and how do people think about being adventurous. And the show has evolved and progressed, right? It's 6 years. The world has changed underneath the show, and the show has progressed itself. Back when I started, I was really trying to learn, how can I travel the world and live abroad and earn a living? And I thought, that's the life of an adventurer. So I had to find people who were already doing that, and I had to try to model, how are they earning money? Are they just saving up and then taking a trip? Or are they trying to earn a living as they go? Are they traveling fast or slower? What are they doing? So I was answering a lot of my own questions through these interviews. And I don't expect anybody to actually do this, although I think there is a small handful of people that have listened to every single episode. If you were to go back to the very beginning, you would see I'm just interviewing some of my friends who are successful, but there wasn't this sort of cohesive model of what a good guest would be. And now we've really refined, we've basically got these 4 pillars, and I'll talk about that in a second, but we've got now this well-defined show. We know what it's about. We know it's about adventure and metaphysics and peak performance and business. And all the guests generally are falling into these categories, which makes it easier to talk about and market and things like that. But in the beginning, I didn't really know how to interview. I didn't know how to produce a podcast. I didn't know how to find the right guests, any of these things, right? So I had to learn as I went. And now there's way more people who are digital nomads. In 2014, when I started this, I was still on the early wave of digital nomads. There's tens of thousands of people doing location independent work all around the world. There's websites and conferences and Facebook groups dedicated specifically to digital nomads and remote work and location independence and all of these things that were not super available back then. So we have a lot more experts to draw from, which is super cool. And if you track the change in the world and also the change in my life and you overlay that on the podcast, right? When I started the podcast, I was married. And then I got divorced and I was single. Then I became a father and now I'm married again. So there's all these different phases of life that personally I've experienced while we have this continuity of a podcast through 300 episodes. So probably if you viewed it with that certain lens, you might be able to see, right, where I'm coming from as the host and what questions am I asking, what guests am I bringing on? Because a lot of times I bring on guests that I specifically want to ask them a certain question. Some of my guests, they get recommended to me or people pitch me to be on the show. And if it's a good guest, we'll have them on the show. But sometimes I will seek out very specific guests that I think can give me the answers that I'm seeking, whether it's a specific business challenge or emotional challenge or travel challenge or spiritual challenge or any of these things. And I almost use it as, a chance to get personal insight from an expert. Or if I notice something that's happening with my clients, if I realize that several people are dealing with the same challenge, I'm going to go seek out an expert and do an interview for my clients or for my friends. If I notice my friends are asking me the same type of question or really getting curious about whatever it might be, Instagram or who knows, I'll go find guests specifically for that. So I'm taking the pulse of myself and people around me to do some guidance of where we take the show. So what's really cool is that I don't always know what I'm going to get from these podcasts. And I have taken so many ideas from these guests. I'm now a business coach, but if you went back to listen to episode 48 and 49, I believe it is, with David Wood, where he's talking about how you can get paid for your expertise. That was really when I started thinking about expanding my coaching offering, because before that I was just a cycling coach. Then I started thinking about podcast coaching. Then that eventually evolved into business coaching. But it was those early episodes, 48 and 49, where he introduced that idea. And there have been many guests that have brought an idea to the show that I've taken and done. Another guest suggested, why don't you take all these interviews and make them into a book? Well, that's eventually what became the book Superconductors. And we're also working on an adventure stories book, taking some of the greatest and most wild adventure stories from this episode and turning them into a book. So that's another idea I stole from a guest. I've grown my Instagram account by several thousand people just from ideas that I've gotten from a guest, like Brendan Burns, for example. Speaking of another Burns, Stephanie Burns, once I interviewed her, I started asking for more and more audacious things. Ask and you shall receive. And so I started making what she calls unreasonable requests, asking for big things. And so these guests have brought so many interesting ideas that I've actually incorporated into my life, into my travels, into my business, into my family and relationships. It's been such an amazing access point as the host. And I hope it has been as well for the listener, because when you actually apply these ideas, things happen. Such big things happen for you, just dramatic things happen in your life. And the really important part is you don't have to get it perfect, but you do need to go and try it. You can learn these concepts, but until you actually go and try using them, you don't really know the knowledge. You don't really understand how everything works. So, right, until you go through an experience, you can't ever know what it's like to be a parent or an author or to be a podcast host of a long-running podcast until you do it. There's just no way to know it beforehand. So let's come back to identity for a second. This podcast and the title have shaped my identity. Now I can say I'm a podcaster. What does that mean? I'm someone that produces podcasts. And so what does it take to produce 300 episodes? It takes the self-identity of someone who's committed to producing this creative content. So there have been times when, something's gotten in the way and I haven't produced an episode for a month or two or something like that. And there's other times when I go in bursts and I'll record 10 episodes in a week and I get really on a roll. And that's okay, right? There's consistency over time. And generally throughout the life of the show, I've been able to put out an episode pretty much every week. But if I didn't have the identity as a podcaster, as a podcast host, then I wouldn't be producing these podcasts. I might have started and I would have run out of steam. So it's important that I'm operating from the identity of being a podcaster. And that's why I'm not planning on stopping. I said I'm going to do 300 episodes, but at this point I have no intention of stopping. This is one of the best parts of my business, best parts of my life. And so I'm motivated to continue improving the show, continue getting these guests on. And one of the directions I think that's really important right now in our world is, as I mentioned, I'm trying to learn something from guests, but what I really want to move towards is a collaborative process. A podcast is a great way to help somebody share their message. If you build a platform like a podcast or a YouTube channel or an Instagram account or any of these things, you can shine the light on other people that are doing really good things. And that's one thing I love about podcasting. But I want to take that a step further and really look at what kind of collaborations, what kind of win-win scenarios can I create with my guests? Because most of my guests have some mission. They're trying to make the world a better place in their own unique way. And I want to take this a step further. I'm not sure exactly what that looks like, but I believe if we approach with the idea of how can we co-create together and look at creating win-win scenarios, then I think that's really what's going to help progress our planet. That's what's going to progress us as humanity and as species, and really looking at how can I help? How can I serve other people that's also in line with my own interests? So we've got the identity piece, right? The podcast shapes my identity, but my identity is what allows me to keep podcasting. And so when we started this show, there was, the name of the show, Adventure. So we knew we were going to talk about travel probably and exploration and things like that. But what we've really discovered is that there's these 4 pillars, the metaphysics, the spiritual side, which is sort of the newest pillar, and the adventure, the travel, the digital nomad stuff. Then there's the business skills, right? We dig into what I call the Thought Leaders MBA and learning the specific skills needed for business. And then there's this sort of overarching theme of what allows these people who set world records or are billionaires or whatever, what allows them to be best in the world, and really looking at the mental and psychological aspects of what they're doing. And funny enough, these are the 4 pillars that I rely on when I coach entrepreneurs, because I think, all 4 of these pillars are needed in order to really function as high as you can as an executive or founder of a startup, as an entrepreneur, to have the confidence and resourcefulness as a traveler, and also to be operating in an aligned way, right? In a way where what you're doing in the world is for your greatest good as a person and for the greatest good of other people. And so I think that's really important. And so we're going to continue operating through this framework of these 4 pillars. And what I call is the leap methodology. And what we're talking about here is a move towards what I call quantum entrepreneurship. That is harnessing not just business skills, but alignment with the greatest good for yourself in the universe to create businesses that both teach you the lessons and allow you to progress right through your own journey, right? The hero's journey that we talk about. Entrepreneurship is such an amazing tool. Adventure is such an amazing tool to really have this range of experiences to grow and develop as yourself, but it also is the perfect outlet to contribute to the benefit of the rest of humanity. And so that's really what's driving both this podcast, is my interest in the best information, the best stories, the best ideas that are going to help humanity really move away from this ego-driven, I need to grab everything that I can, to a economy, a culture, a society of service to other people, of contribution, but also in a way that what we're doing, whether it's business or travel or adventure or sports, any of these things, where we both find joy, where we're moving towards things that we really want to be doing, that really light us up, and finding the overlap between that and what we're called to do. What is our mission? What do we really feel we want to change in the world? And when we find that sweet spot, then it's so easy to wake up in the morning and pour our energy into our projects, into our business, into making the world a better place. So I plan to continue the podcast in its current format and an interview format, a long form interview. We've seen from people like Tim Ferriss and Rich Roll that high quality long form interviews with really quality guests is, millions and millions of people love this type of content. So I think instead of moving towards shorter episodes, I think the interviews may continue to get even more in depth, which means longer prep time, longer interviews. And so I don't know if we'll do less, but definitely focusing on high quality long form interviews. And I want to continue bringing in these 5-Minute Friday pieces that I'm doing, short little bursts of insight from either the work that I'm doing with my clients or something that I've pieced together from several different guests, right? If I want to take a theme from a certain set of business experts or a certain set of adventure experts and bring that to you guys. So you'll be able to use those specifically for your businesses and specifically for your personal development and evolution. So we're going to do this split, these short lesson episodes and these longer interview episodes. And, I want to say that having a podcast is like planting a tree, right? It's amazing to have this platform. It gives you access. It gives a host of a podcast access to be able to meet people. It gives this sort of the credibility or the social proof that you can go interview an Olympian, or you can go talk to a billionaire or a CEO or somebody that is busy and important, and it gives you this amazing access pass to be able to do that. And it also gives you this platform. And I mentioned this earlier, but it's really amazing to say, hey, I love what you're doing, and I want to interview and I want to share your work with my audience. And because we've got such a well-established podcast and people respect it, we can do that. We can shine the light on things that are important to us. And really, that's part of the larger mission of humanity right now is really deciding what's important. What do we want to pay attention to? What do we want to create together? What is the next few years? What is the next century of humanity, life on Earth like? And by listening to this podcast, you are participating in that. You're playing an important role, not just in your own personal evolution and adventure and excitement and enjoyment and all these things and experiences, but you're getting access to guests, and you're playing a role in what do we want to create together? Because, obviously in these coronavirus times, this is so important, and this chance for us to step up and lead in our own way and really do what is exciting for us, what we want to be doing. And this podcast is going to give you the tools to do what you really want to be doing. And that might change from year to year, but right now, what's exciting and what do you want to be moving towards? What do you want to be doing more of? What do you want to stop doing? You don't have to do everything just because you've been doing it. So with that, I think I want to just thank you for listening. I want to thank the amazing guests that have come on the show. Many of these guests have gone on to become mentors, friends, clients. I've established a lot of long-term great relationships with these guests and with you, the listener. So many of you have been listening for a long time. Some of you are just discovering the show. Thank you so much for listening. It's really a pleasure to know that people are out there getting value from this content. So just a quick plug, I guess, if you haven't subscribed to the show, or if you haven't left a rating, episode 300, come celebrate with me. Would love a review telling me what you love about the show. What's been meaningful for you? If you've been following along for a while, that would be super helpful. And if you know other people in your life that like adventure, that like metaphysics, that like to think about and become high performers in their respective areas, recommend this podcast to them. A word of mouth recommendations is one of the best compliments you can give to the show or to anyone, really. And also, if you're ready to have a business and a life where you control your destiny and you really want to have a unique contribution in the world and earn a living so that you can continue to help people, right? I always say that money is fuel for your mission. If you can earn money doing what you love, then you can help more people and you can keep growing from there. So if you want to learn how we do that and how I work with my thought leader clients, with these coaches and speakers and podcasters and course creators, then head over to derekloudermilk.com, check out the coaching, and there you'll have a chance to apply for a strategy session with me. All right, that's the end of this celebration episode 300. What a journey! What a milestone! And it feels so important, and yet also it's just another day, right? It's just another step along the way. 300 leads to 600, leads to a million. Who knows? But thank you again for listening all the way through this episode and for listening to the show. Now it's your turn to go out there and be adventurous.